Ladies, what is going on with your money? Do you have any? No shame here if you don't. Just checking. What about a resume? When's the last time you put your resume together? If you're looking for a new job. And if you're in a relationship, do you guys push each other to reach for promotions? Do you talk to your girlfriends about your career trajectory? We're going to talk about it all on this episode of the katihyershow because we are discussing careers. We'd love to talk about careers, personal finance, relationships, and Jesus, not in that order, because I'm passionate about helping share our money mistakes so you don't have to. Think of me as your metaphorical big sister on your personal finance journey. And every episode, I look at the Proverbs 31 woman because she is such a boss with businesses, her employees. She is in real estate. She makes investments. Plus, she has these rich family relationships and a strong faith. Maybe she has it all. Let's check out what she has to say this episode, and we'll talk about how that relates to your career. Proverbs 31:17 reads, "She sets about her work vigorously. Her arms are strong for her tasks." Another translation reads, "She girds her loins with strength, and her arms are made strong." She girdeth her loins. How does one girdeth thine loins anyway? I'm going to tell you how to gird up your loins. Imagine Lawrence of Arabia style head to toe tunic. And all of a sudden there is a enemy army on the horizon. You got to go prepare yourself for battle and quick. So you take your tunic, you gather it up above your knees, and then you pull all the fabric in front of you so it's snug against your backside. Then you stick all the fabric between your legs, pull it behind you nice and tight, and then split the fabric behind your body into half in your right hand, half in your left hand, so you can tie it in front of you. Now you have turned your tunic into a pair of shorts, a pair of biblical shorts. Either way, you're all set for battle once you have girded your loins. So go forth and gird up your loins. Does this make sense? What I'm getting at here is the text has this element of battle readiness. One of the commentaries says she gives her utmost to battle. She girdeth her loins with strength. So she shows her readiness with every good work. And she has cheerfulness, spirit, resolution, and she dispatches herself with expedition. The allusion to girding and tucking up of your garments was making yourself ready with excellence for battle, to take down an enemy. So she is ready to put her utmost forth in business. These are some of the nuanced meanings you get when you look at the different translations and different commentaries of these ancient scriptures. I find that fascinating. For example, are you bringing your utmost to work every day? Or is it just a slog and you find yourself dragging yourself to the office on Monday? I think Ken Coleman, America's career coach, says that some 70% of Americans hate their job. Ugh. If I felt that way, I certainly would have a hard time putting myself into it. But as we've talked about on this show, and as you've probably seen elsewhere, there's that idea of working unto the Lord, or work is the reward. The thing that we do is the reward itself. And then there's this idea that we looked at in a previous Proverbs 31 verse that work is a form of worship, Wow. So that should help elevate us in terms of our performance. But I think one of the reasons people might feel so at odds with bringing it every day to work is because they might be underpaid. In fact, I am suspicious of this because I have learned recently that 68, 69, something like nearly 7 out of 10 women, 70% of women have never asked for a raise. Never. 10% of women think that if they ask for a raise, they'll lose their job entirely. If I thought I was going to lose my employment, I wouldn't ask for a raise either. But then there's this self-fulfilling prophecy of, I hate my job. I'm not going to bring my best to the job because they don't pay me at that job, but you don't ask for the raise so they reflect your value. And so then the cycle just continues. You still don't like your job. You still don't bring your all because you're still not paid what you're worth. And then you don't work to the level of your ability because you're just kind of burnt out at work. So how do we stop this whole cycle of being underpaid, hating our jobs? What is the key? We are going to talk all about your work, your salary, and negotiating a raise. I don't want you to be one of those majority of women who have never asked for a raise or never negotiated in their entire careers. It doesn't have to be scary. It doesn't have to be this enigmatic thing. And it certainly doesn't have to end in you losing your job. In fact, there are a lot of things you can do to prepare to have a conversation with your employer about your salary. And you can reframe negotiations as two people who are partners having a conversation instead of this adversarial thing. A couple of the myths that exist out there that reinforce this fear over negotiating and the lack of action you've probably heard of. Things like, well, money is evil. We hear this myth all the time. You see it in culture, in Hollywood, in movies. Just think about The Devil Wears Prada. The rich boss, terrible, terrible boss. And rich, and terrible, and rich. How about Goldie Hawn's character in Overboard? This spoiled, rich young woman only gets a heart after she loses her memory and lives a life of poverty. Or there's a million examples out there of us tying together wealth and evilness in our minds. You know, those robber barons, those Cruella de Vil. She's rich. She's wicked. She murders puppies for profit, for goodness sake. From the time we're little kids, we weave together this idea that money is bad. So subconsciously, why would we ask for more money? We're not bad. We're good. I just want to help you remember that money is a tool. Money is a tool. It is amoral. You can use money to build a hospital. Or you can use money like Cruella de Vil to murder puppies. Or you can use money to help somebody adopt a baby. Or you can use money to fund a homeless shelter. Or you can use money to bless your community. Think of the idea that money is a tool and you choose what you do with it. So money is not evil. Money is amoral. It doesn't have morals. It's what you do with it that matters. Okay, the other myth that I hear a lot is related to the fear that I'm going to lose my job if I ask for a raise. And it's this idea that we don't want our employer to think we're ungrateful. We're so grateful to have a job that we think if we ask for a raise, then that means we're not grateful for what we already have. And that is not an accurate way to think about this, because you go to work and bring value for an employer, and they are grateful to you And in exchange, they give you a certificate of appreciation with a president's head printed on it. Dollar bill, money, right? It's an exchange of value. The more value you bring, the more value you should earn. So, how do you ask for a raise? How do you negotiate a salary adjustment? How do you go in there without being so afraid that you're going to faint? Well, my friend Nicole has doubled her salary in just as many years. In 3 years, she doubled her salary. And there is a system that you can use to prepare for and negotiate a salary raise. You just need to know what to do. In our interview, we are going to jump into it. Nicole and I have been friends for a long time, and she is full of a wealth of ideas for how you can walk through negotiating a raise. So let's listen. Nicole, I'm so glad to see you. Welcome to the show.
Hi, Katie. Thanks.
We have been friends for a long time. I was a sophomore at FSU, right? That's when we met in 2008 or 9, somewhere around.
Yep. And our PR major program became classmates and then like think tank buds.
That's right. We launched our own little company back then and we won some competitions and we have had a fun time and have remained friends and professional, just encouraging each other, mentees, co-mentees, I don't know what you call that, ever since.
Exactly.
And I have been in your shadow watching your meteoric rise through your career. And that is why I invited you on the show, because you are such a boss. And I think there's a lot of stuff we can learn from you. Specifically, we're going to talk about negotiating raises. But for our listeners and watchers, why don't you give us a little view of what you do today and quickly how you got there?
Well, you're making me blush. So thank you for that introduction. So as Katie said, we met obviously at FSU, Florida State PR program. So I have stuck with my major. I'm in the career. I have, been working in that field for almost 10 years since we graduated. So I first started my career at a PR agency, which was very formative, would highly recommend it to anyone in the field. You just do a lot of work, a lot of time for a huge variety of tasks and clients and expectations. You kind of learn how to be a professional in an agency. So that's what I consider the first half of my career. The second half, I kind of dabbled in right in the middle, there was 1 year where I worked for a nonprofit. And then I made a physical move to a different city from Boston, Massachusetts to Austin, Texas, where I'm kind of in like the second half of my decade-long career as head of communications at The Zebra, which is an auto insurance comparison website. So think like kayak.com, but for car insurance. If you had told little sophomore Nikki Beck at Florida State that she'd be jazzed to be leading communications for an insurance tech company in Austin, Texas, she would not have believed you, but it's just been amazing to work in-house now and kind of learn and grow. And I've really been fortunate to kind of climb the ranks there, as is the nature of startup life. When I joined, there were 60 people and now we're nearing 300 4 years later. So it's been great to kind of evolve with the company. And I've learned a couple things along the way about money and growth, and happy to share.
I am excited to have you here. It's going to be a great conversation. And one of the reasons I think it is so pertinent that we talk about career trajectory and negotiating raises and salaries is because women suck at doing this.
Yeah.
60% of women, according to an article I read in CNBC, have never negotiated. Like never. And what's more, 3/4 of women are willing to leave their job if they feel like they're underpaid, instead of staying in a job they might love and asking for more money to reflect their value in the workplace.
Yeah, and that's a shame for both, the employer and the candidate.
Absolutely. I think I also read in my research that employers are kind of stunned to hear that someone is leaving without having had that conversation. Let's revisit. Let's figure out what the actual value is. What's the worth? What's that look like in the marketplace? But yeah, they're just too willing to leave. And a large minority, a good chunk of women think that they would be fired if they simply asked for a salary raise. Yeah.
Oof, that's got to be illegal, right? That's got to be illegal. I get the fear, but that's
Right. I understand why you would not want to make a decision if you thought you simply having a conversation was going to end up in losing your employment. But A, that's very unlikely to happen. And B, if it does happen, it sounds like a toxic workplace you don't want to be a part of anyway.
Totally. Totally agree.
Yeah. So there are things we can do to actually walk into a negotiation with preparation and confidence. And you and I have talked at length about this. I've asked you for guidance before on how you have successfully negotiated raises. And that, my friend, is what we're going to talk about now. So
Good planning.
for all my listeners, all my subscribers who want to know, how do I negotiate a raise? What do I need to do? Is it going to terrify me and I just, faint in the middle of it? What's going to happen? We're going to get into that. We are going to get into that. Now, you have made lateral moves or leaving one place and going to another and getting a better salary. You have gotten raises and promotions within. Tell us just a little bit. You don't have to dive into numbers if you don't want to, maybe percentages, but what does that look like in your career?
So my salary doubled in 3 years. So that is absolutely something that I'm super proud of. But like many women, like many people perhaps starting their careers, I was terrified to talk about money. I was grateful to have a job. And working in PR, I was like, I'm never going to make big bucks, right? Like, this isn't my thing. I'm not a doctor. I'm not a lawyer. Like, I shouldn't expect a lot. I'm just doing PR. And that was a really dumb mindset. And I regret it now. But it has kind of shown throughout the past couple of years of like, that's dumb. And like, nobody else would think like this. And if I don't tout my own worth, then others won't. So another thing that's really helped me understand is being a manager myself. So hearing my direct reports ask for a raise or negotiating a salary when I'm making them a job offer, you start to kind of realize what everyone tells you all along, like, it's a business. It's not personal. This isn't coming out of my wallet. When somebody is asking for more money, the only thing I can do is be like, either the business has it or it doesn't. You've made your case or you haven't. So that has also kind of helped me understand that it's not as scary as it has to be. You definitely can come prepared. And the worst, as is so cliche, the worst someone can do is say no. And then in that case, you can either ask for something else. I'm a big fan of asking for non-traditional compensation. So equity in the company, flexibility, extra time off, things like that could be important to you. That is worth money. And you should ask for that if they don't have any wiggle room in an actual budget, an actual salary. So all those things we can get into kind of as like a real plan, but just know that it's not so scary and you should do that. And I hope that we get to the point where if you're not asking for more money or you're not asking for a raise, people are like, what's up with that? It's weird. So start getting to a point where you expect that to be part of your job life cycle, your job process as you're there a year, 2 years and are advancing.
And I will just add, I'll jump in here and add, moms and dads, you need to talk to your kids equally about when you start work, Junior or Sally Jane, I expect you to negotiate. I expect you to ask for a raise. There's a lot of research out there, Nicole, that says that fathers teach their sons how to negotiate as a rite of passage. And women either are just silent on the topic because we feel inequipped ourselves, or 60% of us have never done it. So how can we teach it?
Yeah.
Or we recommend bad advice, like you better marry rich. We make that joke, right? But we've heard it. You can hear traces of that bad narrative in life and culture. So parents, remember to tell your kids about this very normal part of your career, negotiating.
Yeah. And I think that in general, right? I know you're a big advocate of that. Teach your kids about money in all ways. They need to be self-sufficient. They need to save. They need to learn how it works. I talk with my husband all the time. Money's a game. So just learn how to play it, learn the rules, and you're going to be great. And you're going to be already better off than your parents were, who never talked to you about it.
Preach, preacher. Okay. That reminds me of one of my most favorite myths to debunk, which is I failed at money, so I'm just never going to try again. I just suck with money. As if it's this static thing, either you did or you didn't. No, like you can always get better. Up from here.
Yep. You can always get a raise and you can always get a promotion, even if you had a bad year.
Amen. Speaking of bad year, can you get a raise or a promotion in 2020? I mean, a pandemic, the GDP shrunk. Tell me, is it even possible?
I think that depends what industry you're in. If you are in, hospitality, then you are lucky to have a job, God bless everybody there who's struggling. But if you're in something that's really taken off, my industry, insurance, car insurance is legally mandated. People have to have it. And in a time when the economy is on a downturn, you want to save more. So you're willing to go to something like the zebra.com to find maybe $30 in savings when before that wouldn't have been worth your time. So those industries are doing well in the pandemic. I mean, imagine, my husband always jokes, the sign makers, the people who make signs for pick up here, call here, that business is potentially booming because everybody needs one. We're open for carry out, things like that. So it's all about being appropriate and understanding, like reading the room, which is just kind of good life advice. But it's not out of the question to ask for a raise in a hard time if your company is doing well and you're adding a lot of value.
Absolutely. Adding value is the key. And maybe you're in an industry where that's just not possible right now. When Henry Ford came out with a car, if you were a horse carriage driver or a carriage maker, you needed to start thinking differently. That same mentality, I think, can be applied in 2020. You are a valuable worker, dear listener. You just might need to look where your value is needed. You can't just wait for someone to come to you. You might need to go somewhere else. But did you, Nicole Beck Januario, did you receive a raise or promotion in 2020?
I did. So that actually was through a random combination of circumstances. So my predecessor left the company, and I was able to step into her role, but it was only after proving myself for 3 months that I was given that. So it really is nothing ever guaranteed, but there are ways that I was planning on adding value anyway to kind of start that on the next track, because I had been in my current title for a year and a half. And I was like, all right, now's the time to start the building phase. And that's just because of my position at work. If I had, it was at more of a junior level, I would have started that building phase 3 months after my promotion, because I believe they come quicker the more junior you are. So kind of know where you are there, but it is possible, and always kind of be looking forward to that next move in ways that you can continue to grow.
Absolutely. I also got a raise and a promotion in 2020. As organizations restructure, there's opportunities there, right? Maybe they can't have 4 different departments doing these things. They're going to shrink down to 3, but they're going to elevate people within and have the other set of people do something different. You just need to look at exactly what you're talking about, which is your value to the employer or to your client. How can you bring more value? So how do you know what your value is in the marketplace? How do you know your worth? What are some of the things people can do to figure that out?
I mean, that's a great question. First, just be a little introspective. Try to be as realistic as humanly possible. If you have been on, performance improvement plan or some kind of probation, like maybe take that time to realize, okay, like I need to get back to level setting. I'm still kind of at baseline. I'm not going to be asking for more if I've barely hit baseline, or if I've had to be kind of prodded to increase my performance because my bosses were disappointed in me. So
I think the first thing is context. Like if you're slacking at the job, that's not the right time.
right. You don't deserve it yet. So kind of figure that out. Also realize your trajectory. So like you said, Katie, I have made lateral moves. And in one case, I actually took a position coming to my current job, actually, technically with a title a little bit lower and a salary that was in numeric wise equal, but in a much more expensive city. And so that is when I was able to advocate and say, hey, I came in underpaid, I came in undertitled, and I proved myself. Now is time to kind of level set and make that ship right. You're welcome for kind of like the trial run at this level, but now my capabilities are worth this much. And I know you know that because I've done it for you. So that's another time to kind of self-assess and be like, all right, did I come in maybe as an intern? And now it's time for that full-time employment, get that health insurance, whatever you need to do, kind of look at the timing there of where you've come in. And then also look, have you taken on any new responsibilities? So something I highly recommend, this is not passive, this is very active. If you are in a certain role and there's a new software coming out, train yourself on it before anybody asks you to. And then you can say, I know this software, I can help teach others. I can help, there's no lag time here, like kind of learn that on your own time. And that's just like a skill you have that they otherwise would have had to pay you to kind of learn and things like that. Like that's just something so quick and easy where you can kind of be like, okay, I know I've set myself up for this. I know it's been this amount of time. I know I've added this value. And then last but not least, kind of dollars and cents, see if you you've actually saved the company money? Have you negotiated with a vendor for a contract that, was $1 million and you got them down to 750? Like, you've set a salary, $250,000, like that's what they would have paid. So they can give you another 10K or something like that out of that. So start doing that kind of mental math. So that's all what I would call the housekeeping part of figuring out how to know your worth.
That bringing value to the employer can look a lot of different ways, and you can be really creative about it. You just said if you negotiate with a vendor, you can specifically see, okay, we spent $2 million last year and I negotiated and we're only spending 1.75 this year. That is very cut and dry, but there are other ways too. For example, I worked at a organization where we didn't know where a lot of the referral marketing dollars was coming from. We didn't understand how we were getting that business because we didn't have a good tracking system. So I implemented this new reporting tracking thing, and we were able to figure out where over $2 million of misunderstood income was coming from. So that was a creative way to say, okay, look, I identified this thing where we were totally blind. That's a huge value to employer because now they can make really strategic decisions. So there's a lot of creative ways to figure out, okay, here's a specific thing I brought value to.
And in that case, Katie, attribution is a lot of people's full-time jobs. So like by setting up a program or a process, you could have saved them from hiring an analyst, a business analyst to come in and check every morning manually where this was coming from. So just another reason to be like, okay, not only was I efficient, but I also saved you manpower and time by automating something like this, which is huge.
What about going and doing some research and figuring out what your peers are making? What do you have to say about that?
I mean, this is tricky. Be careful. Obviously, I think here in Texas, we're trending towards some kind of legislation where you should never be able to be penalized should you share your salary with your coworkers. I think in some places that's actually maybe against workplace violations or something. Ask around if you feel comfortable. It is hard, I think, especially for women. I share my salary with a couple girlfriends who I've been talking about it with since back when we were making 28K a year, something really small. But it's hard. Yeah, it's hard. And sometimes you're just like, I don't know, what if this makes somebody feel bad? But at the end of the day, try to figure it out. Maybe ranges would be good. There's a couple resources online, LinkedIn Salary, Indeed, salary.com, Glassdoor, PayScale. Try to find kind of an amalgamation of all of those. But something I will say, I'll call out for those. Think about your title. So if you are working in a startup and they've given you the title marketing wizard, for example, that's not going to be in PayScale. That's not going to be on Glassdoor. That's some kind of mumbo jumbo designed to probably hold you back, honestly, because how are you supposed to ever compare what's going on there? So figure out in kind of like a real world application what your title would be. And sometimes a word can make all the difference. So I'll give you an example. I was hiring on my team for a consumer insights analyst, somebody to really dig into our user data and find stories every day of, we've really seen an uptick in people shopping after midnight. What does this mean? Let's take this to press. Let's see what this could mean for shopping trends and things like that. But that title, analyst, is traditionally used for business insights analysts, people who look at numbers and revenue and attribution. And the salary for somebody who does that is much higher than the salary for somebody who's just looking into user data and trying to find media worthy trends from like a marketing point of view.
Same is used for two totally different skill sets.
Exactly. So that was kind of a tricky watch out for us as an employer to make sure that we weren't getting candidates who were misled about what that job meant and ending up making sure that we weren't negotiating on two different planes. Because if somebody came in and said, I looked on Glassdoor and analysts make 100K and we're offering 50, something like that, that wouldn't really be useful to us. So that's why I say, again, knowing those titles is very important, and knowing the job description and what you do is important. You could be leading, accounting for an entire company, but if you're just called accountant and on Glassdoor you go in and look, and in Detroit, Michigan, that person is making 40,000 less than you think you deserve because you're running it for this company, that could end up not serving you well. So don't give up on stuff like that, but don't take it as gospel. Make sure you know exactly kind of what you're doing and be able to point out the nuances.
That is really, really smart tip. So LinkedIn Salary, Indeed, salary.com, Glassdoor, PayScale, and be aware that there are regional differences too, right?
Yeah.
You said the Detroit marketplace is going to be very different from Kansas City or Boston from Phoenix. So it might not be helpful to look on a national average. You might need to look at your regional average to figure out what the next step is that you're trying to get to.
Yeah, and try to toggle as well with your years of experience as well, because that can certainly help you. Even the industry, the tech industry traditionally pays much better than a nonprofit, for example. So if you're a marketing manager at a nonprofit and a marketing manager for Apple, you can expect quite different compensation. So make sure you are kind of poking around in something as commensurate with what you're actually going to be doing at this job.
Do your research. Good deal.
Totally.
Okay, so then you have figured out what value is you're bringing to your boss. You have figured out what you are being paid and what you should be paid. So what's the next thing? How do you package this all up?
Now you got to convince your boss. So I like to say, do the work for your boss. That is what's going to help you the most. If you just go and say, hey, I found some stuff, like, what do you think? That's not nearly as convincing as having intentionality, setting a 30-minute meeting. I have 30-minute meetings with my direct reports every week. So if one of them were to ask me for a raise, I would love it if they said, hey, I'm going to set some time with you next Tuesday before our one-on-one to talk specifically about compensation. I've been doing some research. I'm going to be asking for a pay raise, and I'd love to present that to you and get your thoughts. I'd be like, great. Okay. So you can go in expecting this. You can go in as a manager and do a little bit of work on your own. And then that way it kind of, takes the scariness out of it. You're just having a conversation. You're promoting something, you're selling yourself, and everybody knows what to expect there. So I would highly recommend packaging it into a document saying, here's the research I've done, link to stuff, screenshot stuff. So there's no doubt. And oftentimes this is important to remember too. Your boss isn't the final say. Unless your boss is the CEO, your boss is probably going to have to ask somebody else. So what was that, Katie?
Advocate on your behalf.
Exactly. So anything you can do to help them advocate for you will only help your own case, because nobody's going to advocate for you as hard as you will. So you put all that blood, sweat, and tears into a written document that somebody else could pass along or reference to the final decision maker at the company. That is going to help you immensely.
And if I could pause real quick, just to drill into this, we are talking about a scenario in which you and your boss are not adversaries, but you're partners. You are trying to figure out what the right value is. So there's oftentimes that, that scary thought, I'm going to get fired if I ask for a raise. This is not a winner and loser situation. It is a working together situation where you can be a partner with your employer and figure out.
I think we should talk through, Katie, what if there are different scenarios? What if your boss isn't your partner? What if your boss says, I don't believe this?
Okay.
Let's talk about that. So in that situation, if you go to your boss and you've presented this compelling argument and you have everything and your boss is like, I don't see it, then you're like, okay, why? Tell me why. Demand. And then you say, what will make you, what do I need to do to get there? And if it sounds completely unreasonable, then you can start thinking of other avenues, maybe go over their head if you have to. That's not necessarily a dirty trick. If you have somebody who's lazy or incompetent or not seeing your worth, and you really think that you're adding a lot of value to the organization, you can say, well, can I have a meeting with, Susan, your boss, and kind of run this by her, because I really disagree. That's a bold move. You could do that. But if your boss is really just somebody who's not willing to see reason, then you may do that, or you may need to reconsider working for this person. Another thing.
I would back up one step before the bold move, which that is a brazen thing. Absolutely. I would say, drill into that. What do I need to do to get there? Question, right? It might look like, okay, you don't see that I'm performing on these key performance areas. I understood them this way. You're understanding them this way. So now it's a conversation about performance. What do I need to do? What does it need to look like for me to get there in 3 months or 6 months? Let's make a plan so that in the end of the second quarter, I can come back and we can revisit this, and I will know I've hit all these things. Now we can move on to the next step. I would just say that making a plan thing is before the go above the head.
Yes, let me clarify. Agreed, 100%. If the plan is unreasonable and they say you have to fly to the moon to do these things, that's when you maybe have the over the head conversation of like, why that doesn't make any sense. Another option, and this has happened to me, the boss says, we don't have it. It's not in the budget. Like, we have finite budgets for the year, for the quarter. Like, I would love to give you this raise. I would love nothing more than to give you this raise, but we have these set benchmarks. So in that case, you need to understand the reality of the money situation. Do they truly look at budgets every quarter? Do they truly look at them at the end of the year? If that's true, if that's real, then you are kind of stuck and beholden to that. And you're going to know that next year, right? So if it's every December, then you work your little tush off until, you're asking for your raise in July. You wait for it in December. Hopefully it comes to fruition. You've made your case. And then the next year you start working and gathering before December comes to ask for that. Sometimes employers can be kind of shady and sneaky. So in that case, maybe you have like a lazy boss who just is like, yeah, I don't think so. Maybe if you're in some kind of informal office setting and you run into your chief financial officer or your accounting person, just be like, hey, I heard, there's salary budgeting once a year. Is that true? Or do you guys look at those books like quarterly? I'm just trying to understand and just kind of get some verification there. But sometimes that is true. Something that's worked for me is that I was told that, your request can't be honored until at least next year. And it was a very nebulous time. Like, I don't know what at least next year means. So at the end of the year, I was kind of met halfway. And then they were like, we're going to look in the new year at the new budget. And then it was that February was like, okay, here's the rest. So I was like, that was kind of a case where I was definitely more passive because there wasn't a lot of information. It was more of an opaque process. Had it gone past February, I think I would have been knocking on the door a little bit more to be like, okay, what is the timeline here? Have you set these meetings? What's going on? That's curiosity. You should never be ashamed of asking for stuff like that. I mean, you can start your search there if you want, and then you'll feel a little bit more in control of like where and when the money is flowing before you even ask for some for yourself.
That is a smart thing to do, to gather information. I mean, you might work for an organization who is responsible to a board, and the board is the one that has to oversee or approve these things. You need to know, if that's the case, you need to know, when is the next board meeting, and would it be appropriate for me to present this to you before then so that we can make this happen?
Exactly.
So and I wanted to add, asking the CFO or the accountant when this information is gathering information. That's not gossip. You guys hear me on the show talk all the time about how I hate gossip. I cannot stand it. If whatever the problem is cannot be solved with who you're talking to, you need to talk up, not across. And this salary negotiation can be a very tricky conversation to have, and it might not be appropriate for you to have it with the people you're talking to. That might be gossip. So anyway, gathering information is a good marker. Stay in the gathering information zone. I had so many things. I was trying to go back to it and I can't remember where I was. So,
sorry.
That's okay. So let's go back to the plan. What do you put together in your presentation? You said screenshots of the stuff you do. You highlight all the work you've done.
Yep. And write down what you want.
Okay.
Put that money down there, put it in writing. And then if it gives you a little tingle, then you're doing it right. Cause you're like, yes, this is what I want. This is what I want. And just remember, the worst they can do is say no, meet you halfway, give you a complimentary compensation. Like I said, like a bonus with incentives, equity in the company, more time off, etc. There are other things you can get, but put that down there, put what you currently make. Another thing I kind of learned, this is just like a really practical tip along the way. A lot of organizations like to give promotions and raises in percentages. So make sure that you are working in your percentage. If you are making less money, obviously a percentage is not going to be as much money as it is for somebody who's making more money. So you can say, I know a 10% raise is standard for 2 years of work, but I already came in below, or I already added this value. So I'm asking for this amount, which is actually 15%, but the amount is what I want you to focus on as what I deserve. So even having an understanding there, that is usually percent. Don't leave money on the table. Ask for more if your percents don't match up.
That is a really good point. Ladies, if you do not negotiate, I know we're talking about salary raises when you're in a current position, but when it comes to the job offer, if you don't negotiate high enough or just ask high enough, think about the years down the road that those salary bumps are percentage based off of. If you don't ask high enough, every year after that, your bump is going to be less too, and all that is going to add up. I mean, I think Carnegie Mellon University says that you're going to leave $1.5 million on the table if you don't do this stuff. So over the course of your career,
I do want to, Katie, let's get to this question too. Asking for money when you are accepting your job. So I have noticed a trend in employment and workforce where The salary discussion happens very early, potentially with recruiters. If your company is that large and they say, what are your expectations? Here is our offer. And a lot of times, because those conversations are happening earlier, there is no room to negotiate at the end. So this is a trend that I have been seeing. So for example, there's a role on the table, they'll ask comp expectations. Say you say my comp expectation is $90,000. The recruiter will say, our max is $80,000. Do you want to go forward or not? In the interview process, if they say yes, when you get to a final offer, you can expect to get 80. If you are offered 76 and you said, well, I thought it was 80, I want 80, there's your negotiation. But if they've told you that at the start, I do believe that you should trust them for being transparent. They're not usually wiggling. Again, being on the hiring side now, we set these budgets for these roles when they are approved from the CEO. And so if somebody's asking for 10K more, and that is determined, you're not going to get that wiggle room. So, excuse me, I think that that is something that could really maybe mislead a lot of people. If you've been trained and taught on this, like always ask for more in your final and you don't get it, you're not necessarily getting screwed over. That could just kind of be the new, more transparent way to set these bands, as I call them, the range at the start.
Yeah, would you say they're trying to filter out people they couldn't afford later anyway?
Exactly. But this is again where you should always kind of play the game and ask the range. So don't say, oh, I think 60 if the range is actually to 80. So you can just say, what is the range of salary that you're considering for this job? And they're going to have to answer you. Ask it first. Ask it first.
I will say that I have been in a salary negotiation experience where I was the one who asked first, what is the range? And they said, no, you give us what you expect first.
Really?
He came back and it was one of those like chicken, your two cars playing chicken kind of thing. And so I budged first and I asked for 15 grand more than I made at the previous position. And it did my quote here is, if it gives you a little tingle, you're doing it right. I was like, oh, I can't believe I'm asking for this, because I thought, oh, they're going to pull the offer. Well, they're not going to pull the offer. They're just going to say it's too much or okay or whatever. And then a year later, when I said, okay, I've been here a year, let's do the annual review. Let's talk about where I think my salary should be now. He said, oh yeah, well, you left money on the table when you first accepted the job. And I thought, dang it, why did I do that? And also it was really hard. It was already a stretch for me, but there was still money on the table. So now I see that as an encouraging story. There might still be money on the table.
Katie, what are your thoughts on going out to interview or get interest in another job to use as leverage in your current job to ask for a raise?
Integrity is a really big thing for me. So I don't like the idea of this conversation happening in a manipulative way. But if you have already had a conversation with your employer, where you said, I'm bringing more value. I've done my research. Here's all the ways I've brought you value. And I think there's a misalignment between what I bring and what I'm paid. And then they say no, then I think it would be an appropriate thing to say, you're keeping me on underpaid. These people are going to pay me the right thing. Can we have that conversation again? What do you think about that?
Yeah. I agree. I actually have done it. So that happened. Remember I told you about that? I got kind of like the half raise and then the full raise later. I asked for the raise. They said no. And I started to doubt myself and I was like, am I really not worth this much? I kind of heard rumors, gossip from other people at the company that they were making this much. And I was like, I'm so below that. I don't understand. Is it just, my position? Is it my department? I don't get it. So a recruiter had reached out to me on LinkedIn for the title that I had been promoted to, director. And I took an interview call and they subscribed to that practice in the very beginning. They said, what are your salary expectations? And I said a number and they were like, oh, that's our floor. So they were like, and we also offer a 20% annual bonus. So I was like, floor plus bonus. And here I was only asking for the floor for this new raise. And so I was able to have a transparent enough conversation with my boss. And I said, listen, I'm really happy. I enjoy the opportunities here, but I took a call with somebody who reached out to me about this position and they let me know that this was their floor and they offer a bonus. I'm just asking for this raise as the floor because I'm committed here. I want to work here. I'm not being greedy, which scratch that. I hate that I even said that. You're never greedy. It's whatever you want and whatever you deserve. But if you want to kind of bring some of that emotion into it of like, I could be asking for the 20% bonus too, but since I know where we are as a company, since I'm committed to growing here, I'm not going to do that. It shows that you're flexible. If you don't want to be flexible and you're going to demand that 20% bonus too, more power to you, do it. Don't be scared for that. But if that's not as important to you as getting what you want from your current employer, then throw that in there as an example of something you did for them, a compromise.
That was a beautiful example of flipping the script on me. You made me answer the question where I am in the host chair. You're supposed to be giving us all the goods, and I am so glad that we didn't rehearse this beforehand, and I passed. And you did that, and you did it in a beautiful way that was not manipulative. That kept your integrity, and I think that is a great example.
Well, my dad always says it's not what you say, it's how you say it, right? So you absolutely can approach this with not manipulative behavior, but in a way that is savvy and in a way that looks out for you. And if you go into your boss and you're like, actually, I've been interviewing and I'm in demand and I really think I should get this. That's very different than saying like, this person is interested in me and like, this is my worth, but I like you guys. Can we figure it out? It's the exact same goal. It's the exact same conversation set in a very different tone with a very different intention. And I agree. Yeah. Manipulation is not the way to go. If you're playing games, it's just like dating. A lot of this workplace stuff feels like dating, right? Don't play games. Don't be shady. Like be upfront with what you want, how you feel, what you deserve, because at the end, that's the only way you're going to be successful in any of this.
Amen. And the last thing I think we should touch on before wrapping this up is that feeling that you talked about the word greedy and you hated using the word greedy. Okay, I learned this from Mark Gungor. He's a pastor and does this series called Laugh Your Way to a Better Marriage, where he talks about the difference between men's brains and women's brains. And a lot on this show, I like to delve into the specific challenges women are facing with money and in their careers and those kinds of things. And women talk so often about the emotional cages they're in, without using those words, when it comes to talking about salary or negotiating, whatever it is. For example, I counsel someone who said, I simply can't ask for a raise because I don't want them to think I'm ungrateful.
Mm-hmm.
What? How is it that we think that asking for our value means we're not grateful, or we think I'm worth this much? Salary.com says the marketplace is paying this for my skill. I'm saving 20 times this for my employer. And yet we think if I ask, I'm greedy. We have to bifurcate that. There is worth in the marketplace. Asking for your value, what you provide to the employer, is an exchange of mutual value. They are giving you a salary and you are giving them a service, and they love to have you there. That's why you're employed there.
You go to the grocery store and say, oh gosh, I'd really like these Honey Nut Cheerios. And then they're like, well, will you buy them for like $1? And you're like, no, like that's what they cost.
Box you.
That's what they cost. And if they can't deal with that, I think another just kind of like life work advice, woman to woman, if any company tells you they are a family, you run far away. It is a business. It is not a family. I think that is so manipulative in the workplace. I understand camaraderie. I understand long nights. I understand building something in the trenches. But if they say it's a family, it's not. Because if you're puking, they're not holding your hair. They are not your family. And so you never need to think like, oh, are they going to think I'm ungrateful? For what? Making them a ton of money, providing a ton of value for them, helping them grow? Absolutely not. So that is as a total mindset thing. And you just have to practice that. I'm a big fan. Fake it till you make it. Tell yourself that in the mirror until you believe it, because you're so right, Katie. Like, you don't want to seem ungrateful and you don't want to lose your job. And unfortunately, women, we have to deal with even more of a stigma. Like, are you a B word? Like, it's just like that. You don't want to ever have that stuck on you. You don't want to ever have anyone think that of you. But when you approach this with facts and with determination and with proof, nobody can tell you that you're wrong. They can only say it's not possible or we're not willing to. And then you can make your choice of what to do after that. But yeah, just try to get past that mindset. It is not a family. They're taking everything from you. They expect you to be there on time. They expect you to do good work. You are doing that. So it is mutual, and do not let them think that they owe you or you owe them. You don't.
If anything, you're doing way above and beyond. If my conversations with hundreds of women have taught me anything, it's that we tend to give it all. Give it
Yeah.
all. So absolutely don't leave anything on the table. This is reminding me, or inspiring me rather, that I think we need to have a conversation about boundaries in our mindset. You're talking about the whole, if they say they're a family, you need to run. I think we should have another conversation about that. So my friend, my longtime friend, we've been friends for over a decade now. Will you come back on the show? I'd love to have you back.
Absolutely. I hope you women, men, anybody listening here takes this wisdom. Katie, you are great preaching the good word about all of these difficult topics. And I just hope that in 10 years, the show is obsolete and has to pivot to something else, because we are all money mavens and we know all this. We got it.
Amen to that. I will put that in my calendar. In 10 years, I'll say, well, look at that. And nobody even remembers that show because women make 20 times more than A, men, and B, negotiate like bosses as soon as they're born.
Exactly. Yeah. Out of the womb. Excuse me. I need a better room. This lighting sucks.
Exactly.
Oh my gosh. That was so fun. That was hysterical. And I had so many good takeaways. So, how do you negotiate a raise? 3 simple things you need to do. Let me remind you, because that was such a good in-depth conversation, but the highlights are: number 1, know your worth. That means really doing some serious introspection and considering the job you're doing at work. That means trying to put a numeric value, calculating what you have brought to your organization. And that means considering your responsibilities. Then the second thing is proving your worth. This is the research part. This is where you get information from websites like Glassdoor.com or Indeed or LinkedIn Salaries. There are tons of websites out there that show you what a person with your job title or your job description makes in different industries, in different geographic regions, and you can go there and plug in all your information about how long you've been on the job, what kind of responsibilities you have, and you can see what your peers in your industry are making. Then number three is do the job for your boss. Do the work for your boss. Compile all of your research on a written document, put it on paper, why and how you've earned the raise or the promotion, and then ask for the conversation. Just ask. It's just a conversation. It's not a scary adversarial thing. I hope this has been helpful to you. I hope this encourages you and empowers you to go and take action in your career. Ask for that raise, ask for that promotion, ask for that salary adjustment. Just ask to have the conversation. You do not have to be afraid to have it. I have put all of this information on a guide on the website, so you can just go to katihyershow.com and click on podcast, and you can find it there. So you can walk through all of these things step by step and use it to prepare for when you talk to your boss. I only have one question left. It is, ladies, what's going on with your money?